everyone, and welcome to a very exciting episode of Our Golden 20s. This week, we had the privilege of sitting down and chatting with Diana Morris, and it's a really fabulous conversation, so I'm excited for you all to hear it, and I think that it's really going to inspire you to just live your best life. So Diana Morris is a clarity coach, speaker, and writer committed to helping people make the most of their life. Through her signature Define, Align, Decide framework, Diana works with high-performing individuals and entrepreneurs to help them find the clarity and certainty that they need to feel fulfilled in all areas of their lives, including work, home, and relationships. Did you want to tell us about yourself and how you became a clarity coach and your sort of journey to where you are now?
The origin story, absolutely. So I I kind of had a similar story that most people our age would have of you go to school, you get the degree, you get the job, you do the thing, and you just hope it works out. More specifically, I did my master's in higher education administration, which is a lot of syllables to say that I used to work in colleges and universities with college students all day. My most recent position in that field was in student conduct. So I was the, person you go to if you violated university policy, and we got to talk about decision making and community membership and all of that jazz. And as I was going through that work in higher ed and education, I was learning about, student development theory. What does it look like as you're an emerging adult? How do you start making decisions about who you are, what you value, how you want to show up in the world? So that's kind of the professional lens of things. And then on the side, as I was going through that process, I was building out my own business of coaching and consulting, helping individuals outside of the college environment figure out what is it that you want to be doing with your life, right? Now that you have this degree, now that you have this job or this relationship, does it actually fit with the version of your life that you thought you would be living at this point, or the version of your life that you think you should be living because of whoever said one thing one time that you've started to cling to? So that's kind of the spark notes. But even, underneath that, for me, the realization of what do I actually want for myself versus what do I think I should want for myself really came after my first real world job. So after graduating with my master's, my fancy degree, got my first job in the industry, was really excited about it, and then ended up being laid off. And it was one of those moments of like, I knew something was up, right? Like your intuition, your gut kind of tells you there's something going on here that just doesn't fit. For me specifically, it was realizing that even though I knew what the job would require based on the job description and what I read, living it did not feel good, right? I thought I wanted this thing, and then I got the thing and I was like, ooh, no, thank you. But I stuck with it because in my mind, I just spent all this time, money on this thing, right? I told everyone this is what I'm going to be doing. I said this is what I want to do. I made this commitment. All these people need me. So if I leave, what does that mean? And then they made the decision for me, which in the moment sucked a lot. But in hindsight, it's like, okay, this is what needed to happen. So taking that experience of, again, knowing deep down inside, but not trusting and listening. How can I help other people start recognizing that for themselves? And then also starting to trust themselves when it's like, all right, you feel the twinge, you have the second thought, you do the little squinting because you're like, am I seeing this correctly? What do you do with that? How do you navigate it?
Yeah, I love that so much. And I love how your journey started by working with students. Our listeners are, just going into post-secondary school or graduating. And that's really when the real world starts for a lot of us, and it becomes a lot of, yes, you're learning through your classes in school, but you're learning so much about yourself because it's probably the first time you're living on your own. It's probably the first time, you're doing a lot of things and figuring out who you are outside of who you've been all through high school or, your childhood kind of thing. So it really is the beginning, point, I think, for a lot of people in figuring out what do I want my life to be? Who am I really kind of thing? And I just love how that's how, your journey started as well. So I know and researching and everything what you do, you have a signature framework that you like to call define, align, and decide. And this is kind of the framework you take in helping your clients. So could you walk us through what that looks like and what exactly how that framework comes to life?
Absolutely. So when I talk about define, it's really defining for yourself what it is you want, right? So often, if you've ever seen The Notebook,
Of
classic movie.
course. Yes.
Okay, so
Yes.
you know the moment when Noah's like, "What do you want?" and Allie's like, "I don't know," and they go back and forth about this thing over and over again. And what I've seen in my own life with the folks I work with friends, family, associates, is it's so hard to truly answer that question, right? Sometimes we get into the default of like what we've always said we wanted or what we expect other people to think we should want, that we just kind of rattle things off. But in the still of the night, when it's just us by ourselves, we're looking around like, I don't know, or I don't like this thing. So that's why I always want to help people start by defining for yourself, what is it that you want? And that can be as large as, for your life in general. And it can be as more immediate as, what do you want from this decision? If you're texting this person, what do you want from that text, right? What type of response are you hoping for? If you're applying for this job, what do you want that experience to look like? So when you're able to define that, when you're able to give voice to that, when you're able to put that into concrete terms, because it's not enough to say, oh, I want to be happy or I want to be successful. What does that mean? Define your happy, define your success. For me, success on, this morning, Sunday that we're recording, was I woke up late, I stared at the ceiling, then I went to make breakfast, and now I'm recording this podcast, right? So that definition is going to look different for someone else's Sunday morning. So you have that definition, you define it for yourself. Then we move into the alignment piece. And this really speaks to how we are making decisions, which we'll get to, but also how are we looking at what came before? A lot of times we talk about like the next step, make it your best one, and like do the right thing or just start. And it's easy to future forecast things of like, here's what I know I should be doing, I could be doing, I would be doing. But also let's align what's come before, because sometimes folks want to ignore the failures, or they want to ignore the hard moments, or they want to downplay what went really well. And that just takes away from all the evidence that you could have been collecting. So let's align it towards that definition. Here's how you know what happiness looks like, because here's when you weren't happy before, or here's where you were happy before.
Right.
Now that you know what happiness looks like, what do you need to do tomorrow, today, the day after, to make sure that you're in that alignment, you're moving forward as needed? And then the decide piece comes from, now that you know your options, now that you know all the things you could do, what do you want to do? Right? It's not enough to just think about it. It's not enough to talk about it. It's not enough to put it on a vision board. You got to do something. It doesn't need to be the big thing, but you at least need to take a step forward. So what is the decision that you're going to make so that you can start moving towards what it is you say you want and the person you say you want to be?
Right. Okay. Yeah, I think that makes sense. I wonder if you could give some almost like tips or tricks specifically around the define part of that, because at least for me, I found like even now that I'm in my late 20s, I feel like I'm stalled in the define part of things. Or it's almost like it's a positive because there are so many sort of great paths I can see myself going down. But then it's like I'm frozen because there are so many options. You know what I mean?
Yes, absolutely. And there are two main things that I always talk with people about when it comes to that specific thing of like, I have so many choices. It's like when you go to a restaurant and there's too many things on the menu, and it's like, can you come back? I need another 10 minutes. And the first thing is realizing that whatever you do, right? Whatever you say, whatever you do, whatever you think, whatever you try, it just needs to be right for now. A lot of times we get so concerned that like, I have to make the right decision. If I don't do this thing correctly, then I've lost every opportunity coming up. And yes, right? There are certain times where there are some decisions that you can't take back or you can't undo, some things that
Mhm.
just will be. And you still get to make another one after that, right? It's not the end of the road until it's the end of the road. So
Yeah.
allowing yourself to say, okay, this just needs to be right for now. If I say I want this job, I just need to want this job for now. I can do the job and then I can change my mind or I can stick with it.
Mm.
If I want to be with this person, I just need to be with them for now. And I'll see how long that goes, how far it takes me. So when confronted with so many options, giving yourself the chance to just do whatever you need to do for now. The second part of that is also thinking through, when we talk about defining, we all carry stories with us about what we think is required, optional, and possible for our lives, right?
Mm.
I think that the only way success in work or like my career success, it means I need to stick with this job until I retire. I think
Right.
that the only way I could be a fulfilled woman is to be married with 2 kids and a dog. I think
Mm.
XYZ, and we chase this version of the thing that we want because we think we're required to do things to have it be a certain way. So taking it back and kind of simplifying that, ask yourself, of these things that you believe, of these definitions that you carry, are they yours or are they someone else's? Are they
Mhm.
required or is it just an option or is it just a possibility? When I look around me and I see what everyone else is doing, do I want that for myself or is it just nice to know that I could if I wanted to, or I want nothing to do with
Yeah.
it?
Yeah.
So really taking a moment to pause and interrogate, why are you doing the things you're doing? Because that's what it
Mhm.
comes down to. Like, it doesn't matter what they say, because they're not going to be the ones with you at the end of the day.
Mhm.
You're going to be with you always. So what do you need to do to be right with yourself when it's all said and done?
Mhm.
Yeah. And I think like that takes a lot of work. You know what I mean? Like a
Yeah.
lot of self-awareness, a lot of like spending time with yourself to really be able to block out that noise. And especially in the world of social media where, there's girls living their day in the life and all of a sudden you're like,
Mhm.
well, I want that life too. All of a sudden now
Mhm.
I'm chasing what she's defined as her success, and it's like, well, I want that too. And then you start chasing it and it's like, wait, this doesn't feel fulfilling or this isn't
Yeah.
actually what I want. It just looks, it looked appealing, but it isn't aligned to like what I actually want. So I think it is, you make it sound so easy and you make it sound so, really inspiring, but it's like it is also a lot of work, to get there. So I think though you did give us some great tips and I think we're big journalers. So I'm like, as soon as you were talking, I was like, I'm using this as a journal prompt tonight. Like
Yeah.
a little before bed journal prompt. Yeah.
Yeah.
To
I
see.
love a good
Yeah.
reflection because, and you bring up such a good point, and I really appreciate you saying it. It sounds so easy, and to do
Mhm.
that, I say, what is the alternative?
Yeah.
It's a
Mhm.
lot harder to be upset with yourself and disappointed in
Totally.
yourself and feel like you're
Yeah.
Yeah.
betraying yourself when you keep doing the things that you know no longer work. So yes,
Yeah.
it's hard, but the alternative is to what? Pretend for the
Yeah.
rest of your life? Like,
Yeah.
you could do that. There
Exactly.
are many people who walk around pretending. I
Mhm.
choose not to be one of them. So it's
Yeah.
really about that decision to choose what is hard because you know what's on
Yeah.
the other side of it. And it's not
Yeah.
like a one and
Definitely.
done thing. The number of times I have
Yeah.
changed my mind this month alone, and there's only 16 days as of us recording today. Like, I thought I knew, and then I get more information. So that's where the right for now comes in. That's where the
Yeah.
permission to change your mind and pivot and trust yourself enough to know that, hey, I can see this person's day in the life, and I can be happy that that exists for them. And I can also say, you know what? If that's giving me some type of joy or excitement, or that looks appealing to me, what can I do in my own world to do that? Because I'm not going to be working for any tech company anytime soon. I can tell you that much.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I would like a little view that's cute. I would like a little catered lunch. Who wouldn't? So how do you start bringing those things in little pieces as well as the big ones? So yes, journal away. I'm always here for a good journaling session.
Yeah, and I think too it's so liberating. I'm one of those people that fears making the wrong or making a mistake or making the
Mhm.
wrong move. So I love the idea of, you don't need to decide for the rest of your life. You know, this one decision, you don't need to be tied to it for the rest of your life. It's just a for now
Mhm.
decision. And then as you get more information, you experience it, you actually see what this decision's all about. You can, you know, reevaluate down the line. Like taking that pressure off is so liberating and like something I need to hear all the time because I just get so in my head about no, it's either this or this
Mhm.
and that's it, you know?
Mhm.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
I think kind of okay, so we just talked about the define piece and I think the next part, so say I do go home tonight and I journal out exactly what my ideal life looks like, you know,
Mhm.
and I'm feeling ready to take action. I'm feeling ready to decide, you know, this is what I want.
Mhm.
How do I go about chasing it? And I think you really brought up a great point of it might be a big goal, but there might be smaller pieces to get there, or you don't need to jump all, you know, all in all at once. So, what would be your advice to the people who know what they want and are ready to go after what they want?
Yes, I would start collecting information, right? Because a lot of times our inability to move forward or our inability to act is because something is missing, right? There's a knowledge gap between the note, like the actual thing, and like, how do I even start doing it, right? So maybe it's
Mhm.
looking at
Totally.
people and saying, okay, how did they get to that point? What were their steps that they took? Maybe it's utilizing Google University or YouTube University, just collecting information. Maybe it's talking with someone. Maybe it's hiring someone. Maybe it's holding yourself accountable and being like, I said I wanted this, but I also said that January 1st, and I haven't done anything yet. So, what is it about
Yeah.
me, my habits, my behaviors, my daily actions that I need to change, adjust, adapt accordingly? But really starting down and like breaking it into small pieces. For example, if you want to run a marathon, very few of us can like hop up off the couch and run a marathon. Some of us will
Mhm.
need to actually buy sneakers. Some of us might
Yeah.
need to drink a glass of water. Some of us might need to
Mhm.
stretch. So figuring out
Mhm.
what do you need to do with the things you already have, the things you've already done, the people in your corner to help you move forward and allow small steps to count as steps and not think that it needs to be a gigantic leap because that's when it gets overwhelming. So it sounds like real
Mhm.
hoorah rah, like, fortune cookie wisdom, but it's simply listing out what is it that I need to do to make this thing a reality and then start checking
Mhm.
things off the list. Find out what you need to find out, talk to who you need to talk to, hire who you need to hire, buy what you need to buy, think what you need to think, and just start moving incrementally. And that's when you're going to start getting from where you are to where you're actually trying to go. Like movement, do the thing, do something.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. I did want to talk kind of related to that about self-sabotaging and sort of like getting in your own way because I feel like this is sometimes even when it's like I know what I want to do. I know how to do it and then I stall out. Like I would love if you could talk about some like common ways that people sort of get in their own way and how to even like identify if you are self-sabotaging or if it's something else going wrong.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, right in the heart with that one, because that's usually the case, right? It's like, for
Yeah.
Yeah.
example, I know I'm of a certain age at this point, I'm getting up there and I feel it in my muscles. And every day I say to myself, Diana, you need to stretch. And then I'm like,
Yeah.
no. And then I feel it in my muscle.
Yeah.
It's one of those things like I know what to do to make this go away. And yes,
Yeah.
there's something in me that I don't want to spend the time on it. I don't prioritize
Mhm.
it. I don't care about it enough. So what I ended up doing is I reached out to a college roommate who is a yoga instructor, and I hired her and I said, look, girl, I need you to tell me what
Mhm.
to do. We will meet
Yeah.
bi-weekly, right? So that's a real life example. So there's a couple of things in that. What I love to do and what I encourage folks to do is whenever you're saying, I can't blank, for me, it's
Mhm.
I can't find time to stretch. Replace the
Mhm.
can't with won't. I won't find time to stretch. And then answer,
Right.
why won't I do this thing? I
Mhm.
can't quit my job. I won't quit my job. Why won't you quit your job? And start looking at the facts. Sometimes
Yeah.
there are real life things that prevent you
Mhm.
from taking certain steps and doing certain things, right? Very few of us can
Mhm.
just like, send off a quick email and be like, peace out, mail my
Yeah.
check to this address, right? Like, as lovely
Yeah.
as that would be. And yet, right, it doesn't need to end there. If you can't immediately or you won't immediately do something, what are the things you can do in the
Yeah.
interim? So the first thing is replace can't with won't and start
Mhm.
interrogating what that looks like. Another part of self-sabotage that I often see come up is when folks they like shoot too high as a way to
Right.
prove
Yeah.
themselves right. Of like, oh, see, I tried to apply for this job and I didn't get it. I knew I wouldn't get it. Well, you weren't
Yeah.
qualified. Let's be real. You don't even like that job. So why are you
Yeah.
creating evidence to prove the deep insecurities or fears or anxieties that you have, and then using that as an example of why you can never do anything similar or anything ever again? So
Yeah.
creating and confirming those negative thoughts and stories to yourself is a subtle way that sometimes we self-sabotage and prevent possibilities in the future. And
Mhm.
then another thing with self-sabotage is sometimes when we look for support from other people, you might be looking for support from the wrong people, right?
Mhm.
Because not your vision for yourself, your goals for yourself, it's not a conference call, right? It's not
Mhm.
something where everyone
Yeah.
gathered around and we all need to agree to it. Of course, it's helpful to have those external opinions and support and people, cheering you on, but learning the difference of I trust myself enough to know that this is what I want versus I need someone else to approve it and okay it before I allow myself to even consider that it's possible.
Yeah.
So those parts of self-sabotage are like the main ones outside of the obvious ones that we
Yeah.
can all imagine.
Yeah, I love that. Well, I do feel like, especially in your late teens and early 20s, like having that, like your goals are a conference call is so common because it's like you are looking for reassurance that you're making the right choice. But then it is, like you said, almost the more people you ask about it, the more uncertain you are, or it's that you're then making choices based off of others' sort of like perceptions. And then if you fail, then you're like, yep, there was the proof that, I could never run a business because I failed my business that I started because my mom thought I'd be good at it. Like it's just, and then that leaks into like all other areas of your life, which is frustrating. But at least I think being aware of it, like you bringing up these points, hopefully like some people listening are having like aha moments.
Yeah.
And I also, I can't believe I almost forgot this one. The one of the biggest forms of self-sabotage is just being mean to yourself. Like you cannot
Yeah.
bully yourself into change. You cannot
Yeah.
degrade yourself into any form of sustainable movement or progression or pivot. It's just not
Yeah.
a thing. And the world is filled with people who are going to be mean, right? The world, I mean, look at any
Yeah.
comment section. The world is going to be filled with people who have something negative to say. So what would it look like to view those moments of, you know what? Now I realize that I was actually living this out for my mom, or I was listening to this, or I was doing that. How can you really look at it with some compassionate curiosity, right? And be kind to yourself as you're trying to figure out, okay, now that I know better, right? What was missing before? What was happening before? This is some of the things that I would talk with my former students about, right? Like if you can imagine coming to what is essentially the principal's office in college to talk about, a policy violation, they made some bad choices. They made some bad decisions. So how do you remove the choice from who you are as a person? Just because you made a mistake doesn't mean that you are a mistake. Just because you may have failed doesn't mean you're a failure. So how can you hold yourself with kindness? Because again, you are where you are whenever you're there.
Yeah.
You are going to
I
be
love
with
that.
yourself for a very long time. So do you want to be with someone who is actually heinous? Do you want to be with someone who treats you cruelly? And it's very
Yeah.
easy to just be down on ourselves. Of, I should have done this. Oh, I knew better. Why did I da 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 da? And again,
Yeah.
you can't be cruel and expect any sustainable movement forward.
Yeah. I honestly think that's kind of something I feel like I figured out early in my 20s, like after graduating, was the self-talk piece. And now I
Mm.
feel like my internal dialogue is always that inner cheerleader. And I don't know how that happened. I don't know when it happened, but it was just like adopting affirmations of you got this, like just traveling on my own. Actually, I think that's when it happened. My first trip by myself. I just kept saying in my head, you got this, you got this. I was so nervous. I was somewhere all by myself, a place I'd never been. And I was just like, you got this. And that's what kind of kept one foot in front of the other. And then that was right when I graduated. So it was also like, okay, well, now I'm applying for a job. I don't know if I got this, but I'm just going to tell myself that I do, and then you say it enough to yourself, something as simple as I got this, you start to believe it, and I think it's sounds so easy, but it takes, years of like
Yeah.
repeating that to yourself, or, years of retraining your brain on how to talk to yourself, and having again that self-awareness of, well, how do I currently talk to myself? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Because I don't know, it's something that you really need to think about and like focus on to like realize, and then you need to make like a big effort to change that, So
Absolutely.
yeah, I
Yeah.
think that is a big self-sabotage thing. For me, I also think it's perfectionism. And I was hoping you'd bring that up because I personally need help with that. Where it's kind of like it's going back to, I don't give myself room to make mistakes. Like I fear making mistakes, but it's also sometimes that's what holds me back. And, some of my friends I can think of too, where it's like, well, if I know I'm not going to land that job, I'm not even going to apply. If I know I'm not going to show up perfectly on this date and be the best version of myself and impress this person, I'm not even going to go on the date. And I think, that can be another form of self-sabotage, that you're just standing in your own way. So, any tips for us perfectionists out there and getting out of our own ways?
Gather around, everyone, listen in. Call it all perfected. And those are such good examples, because the immediate thing that comes to mind is that's the form of self-rejection. You are telling yourself no before someone else can. And
Right.
while it can be framed as, I want to put my best work out there, I want to put my best foot forward, I just want it to be the best it can be, not putting it out there means it doesn't exist, right?
Yeah.
Like at least just put a messy version out, right? So as writers, there's always, do the messy draft, just
First
type
draft.
it out.
Yeah.
Don't even do spell check, just get something, because you can't edit what doesn't exist, right? You can't learn from experiences you've never had. And it sounds so easy. So with that, perfectionism is a futile mission, because there's literally no such thing as perfect. My iPhone is slow as hell. My iPhone's battery is always drained. I feel like we need a new update every 3 months. That didn't stop them from getting out there and putting something in my hand. And I'm still able to use the phone and get things done, right? So what can you just do? What can you say? What can you try to at least move closer, versus not putting anything out there? Because there is no such thing as perfect. And that would also be very boring, right? Imagine if everything was excellent and great the first time.
Yeah.
That's like Pleasantville. That's one of those like Stepford Wives type of situations where it's like, oh, this doesn't even feel good. It's not fun. Where's the plot twist? So recognizing it for what it is, right? I think it's great that you can even label it and say, you know what? I can see myself do these things, and here's what that's tied to, because then you have a choice. You can either keep doing that, knowing what it is, or you can say, I see that, I understand that, and I'm still going to try anyway. I'm still going to put something out. I'm still going to apply. I'm still going to date. I'm still going to have conversations, because that's where the decision comes in, to either stay exactly where you are or to move in a different direction and, live what you actually say you want to be living.
Yeah. I love that. I love you can't edit what doesn't exist. Like,
Yeah.
I love that. That will be in my mind forever because I think that's exactly it. And I
Mhm.
think sometimes that's just the motivation you need to take those small steps towards
Yeah.
whatever bigger goal you're working towards. So, yeah,
Mhm.
thank you for that.
You're very welcome.
Yeah, something that's kind of been brought up a couple times is how like a lot of these ideas are simple,
Mhm.
but you have to be sort of like consistent and do the hard work up
Mhm.
front. So do you have any advice on how to stay like committed and motivated to do the work to like start to live your ideal life?
Mhm. Yes, and the word choices here are very intentional because it is simple,
Mhm.
it's not easy. And
Mhm.
so
Yeah.
often we think that, oh, this is hard. This must mean something is going wrong, or this isn't
Yeah.
working
Right.
out immediately. This must mean that it's not right. And that doesn't make sense, right? Like,
Mhm.
Mhm.
as a metaphor, as an analogy, when you go to the gym, if you're not lifting a heavy weight, if you're not struggling on the last few reps, you're not actually putting in the work needed to
Yeah.
improve your health, improve your muscle structure, whatever the case is. And I think it was Teddy Roosevelt, one of past presidents here in the US, said something along the lines of nothing worth having comes easy. And
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
fundamentally disagree with that. Even after saying what I just said, right? I
I was
fundamentally
like, okay,
disagree
this
with
is a
that.
plot twist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that assumes that everything needs to be a struggle, everything needs to
Right.
be
Yeah.
difficult, everything needs to be painful. And
Right.
yes, some things will be, right? That's how, again, you build muscle, you limp around the next day because you're sore. But there's
Yeah.
also a place where you have to choose your hard, you have to choose your easy. Going back to what we talked
Mhm.
about earlier, like it's easy to just keep on keeping on, right? To
Yeah.
not
Mhm.
to not rock the boat, to keep things simple, to not broach the frustration, to not have the
Mhm.
difficult conversation. But after that moment, when it's just you by yourself, you're going to be replaying it in your mind. You're going to be
Yeah.
questioning what you did or didn't do. That's hard, right? So
Mhm.
which version of it are you looking for? And really thinking through, okay, when it comes to motivation, I don't care about your motivation, right? When it's raining in the morning, I'm not motivated to get up. But I
Mhm.
know that in order to do my work, go to the gym, these are things I've said I've wanted, I'm dedicated to those things. My motivation
Right.
is going to ebb and flow depending on my mood, the day, what's
Yeah.
going on
Yeah.
in the world, what's going on with my family. But am I committed to doing what I said I will do? Am I committed and dedicated to the definition of success and happiness that I've formed for myself? So holding
Mhm.
on to why are you doing the things you're doing? And also challenging yourself to be honest about that why. Are you just doing it
Right.
Yeah.
because it's easy, because you should?
Yeah.
Or is it actually what you want for yourself in this moment? And it's simple. It's not always easy, but it's always worth it. Always worth it in
Mhm.
the
Totally.
end.
Yeah. I love that. And I think motivation, like we have in the past had episodes, where we're talking about like if it's habits, if it's, healthy eating, working out, like whatever it is, and
Mhm.
any form of like self awareness, self care. All the time, people ask us, how do you stay motivated? Even with this podcast, how do you guys stay motivated to show up
Mhm.
every week? How do you?
Mhm.
And I think you bring up a great point is you just need to show up regardless if you're motivated or not,
Yeah.
Mhm.
because that motivation is going to fluctuate. And I think that's something else I feel from social media is like seeing people continue to show up. I just assume they're motivated every day to do that, where it's
Mhm.
like, well, no, that's not realistic.
Mhm.
And tying it into your why, I feel like that's a concept we've heard about. We talk about this all the time at work, like we're working on this project, this is the goal, this is the outcome we're going for. Like it's very
Mhm.
clear what the why is and why you're working on this or
Yeah.
whatever. But in our personal lives, like I don't know if I'm ever asking myself like why, why
Yeah.
Mhm.
do I have to keep going? Like why do I have to do this or what outcome do I want and like what is that going to make me feel? So I
Mhm.
think that's also a really great way to show up for yourself when that motivation is fluctuating.
Mhm.
sometimes you got to dig deep for it, but it's always there, and it'll definitely, pull you through, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, for sure.
Was there anything else that we haven't covered yet that you wanted to make sure you got in here, or?
No, I think we've done the whole expansive gambit about like who you are, why you are, all of those things. And I really think, to wrap it up nicely and put a bow on it, is giving yourself a chance to answer those questions. And giving yourself a chance to answer those questions honestly for you, especially at this point in your life where I know a lot of your listeners, like you talked about, are graduating or early career and trying to figure out like, what am I supposed to do now that it's just me? Now that I am the one responsible for the decisions I'm making, I'm the one responsible for the consequences. That is one of the biggest reasons why people opt out and they stick with what they've always done, is because now you can't blame anyone else. When you make a choice and you don't like what's on the other side of it, it's literally your choice. No one forced you, no one made you. So it's so much easier to like kind of just be there and see what happens and go with the flow. And of course that works, right? There are certain things, certain cliches in life that work for a reason or work for some people, but that doesn't mean that it needs to work for you or that you need to just keep going if you realize that you want something different or you want to try something different. Just give yourself a chance. Like, no one's been here before. Like, we're all doing this thing for the first time every time. So just allow yourself to figure it out and just be surprised by what you discover along the way.
I love that. I'm feeling so inspired and empowered right now. Like, I'm like, I think this pep talk like hit me right when I needed it, where I'm just kind of in this slump of like, I know who I am. Like, I feel really proud of, how I've gotten to where I've got, but I'm just needing a little boost to like, okay, well, what's next, or like what, I don't know, just something to motivate me again, even though we just talked about motivation.
Yeah. A lot recently has been like, I could make this choice because that would look good and that would be like, this is me achieving great things. Or I could make the choice to continue what I'm doing because like, why fix it if it's not broken? This is easy. But then it's like, it's like when you're in those moments, you have to do this like breakdown of like, okay, well, why is this choice important? And if you're just doing this because it's easy, is that the right reason? And I feel like this will really resonate.
I think so too.
Yeah.
It's resonating with me for sure.
I'm so glad. Yes.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, can you tell our listeners what it looks like to work with you and just where they can find you, your website, social media, that kind of thing, in case it is resonating with them and they want to learn more?
Absolutely. So I have a couple of ways that folks can work with me. I work with folks one-on-one. So you come to me, you're like, here's where I am, here's what's going on. I need some type of help, whether it be with, goal setting or just an overview of your overall life and existence and what to do next. So I have those opportunities listed on my website, which I'll say in just a bit. And then for some folks, it's not even like a one-on-one conversation. It's just, I just need to figure out where to start. I just need to figure out what I even want from my life, what I want this thing to look like now that I'm done with school, now that I'm in the job, I have the person. What is the point of it all? So I have an online masterclass that's about 40 or so minutes where I walk you through all these different activities and strategies to answer that question for yourself. It's called Life by Design. And the point of that is, so many of us are living by default of here's what I've done, here's what my parents did, here's what my friends are doing, here's what social media is telling me. So I'm just going to opt into that versus stepping into the wild possibility. Like, I feel like such like a woo-woo, like, flower child when I say that. But what a gift that we get to live. Like I woke up today, I get to do things. And then hopefully tomorrow I get to do it again. Like, that's amazing. So what do you do with that, right? Great power comes great responsibility. What does that look like? So that course helps you figure out what to do with this wild, precious life you've got. And all of that information is available on my website. So DianaRAMorris.com. And that's my social media handle on Instagram and TikTok, Diana R.A. Morris.
Awesome. And we'll link that in the show notes as well. So if you guys listening do want to just click through, we'll have it in everything linked in the show notes.
Awesome.
Great. Well, I think that was everything. So thank you for being such a great guest. Like we said, I feel like our listeners will really resonate, and it's hard to talk about like things generally, which I feel like you did really well. Like I feel like we find it easier to dive into the specifics of like, I don't like my job, what should I do? But like you perfectly encapsulated like big questions in general. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
You're so welcome. You're so welcome. Because all of this is tied in, right? Like this, like this pursuit and this journey, for lack of a cliche, is really going to translate in your work, in your personal life, in your finances, in your health. And I talk about that in the course as well, because that's all of us. There is no separation of who you are at work with who you are with your friends and who you are with your family, because you feel when one is out of sync, and that impacts how you show up overall. So I'm glad, and I hope that folks are able to take this and again, apply it wherever they want for as long as they want, because it's an evergreen conversation and an evergreen approach.
We want to thank Diana again for being on today's podcast episode. We so enjoyed our conversation with her. We're leaving this conversation feeling so empowered and inspired. A few journal prompts to write about tonight, but we also want to thank you guys for listening. We hope you also are feeling inspired and empowered to live your best life. You can find Diana on Instagram, TikTok, and also on her website, which again will all be linked in the show notes. And you can also find us on social media. We're at Our Golden 20s, Instagram, TikTok, Pinterest, Facebook. We're on everything. We're also linked in the show notes. So go check us out on social media. And that is everything. We will see you next Tuesday. Bye.